The church was a plain, whitewashed building with a bell tower, beside which two storks were calmly sitting on a huge nest made of dry sticks. Pablo at the hotel told us that storks were common. If we looked up, we would see similar nests on churches and buildings all over town. Recently, some newly appointed priest had decided, without consulting anyone, that the birds were a nuisance. So he used a long pole, like a chimney sweep's brush, to poke at the nest on his church until it fell apart and the storks flew away. The parishioners were furious and complained to the bishop. No amount of Hail Marys could put matters right. The priest had to pack his bags and leave. The hotel consisted of 3 adjacent townhouses, which had long ago been knocked together to make one. There was a narrow foyer with a high ceiling and granite lintels cut into matching curves over doorways leading into the rooms on each side. The owners were a couple who ran a furniture shop in Lisbon. Their modifications included a kitchen where guests could make their own meals, and a dining room whose floor was set with blue and white tiles. Behind the kitchen there was a small open courtyard with yellow-painted walls. From here a flight of stone steps ascended to a rambling roof terrace, where guests could lounge in the sun on a wooden platform strewn with cushions, eat meals at tables with plain wooden benches, or gather in the evenings to drink wine, play music, watch the stars and fall asleep. Our room had a high ceiling of badly fitting wooden boards and a couple of white-painted chests, no doubt from the shop in Lisbon. The plumbing was modern and everything worked fine. We could have happily stayed for a year. As the main town on the Algarve coast, Faro wouldn't live up to its position without a commercial area. But this turned out to be a few pedestrian-only streets where visitors wander neurotically around looking for something to buy. Beyond the yacht-filled harbour, where orange trees fronted onto the curving quayside, thick stone walls marked the boundaries of the old town, which stood by itself on top of a hill. You could walk from one side of it to the other in a few minutes, following narrow cobbled alleys that passed between terraces of small cottages. Flowering bougainvillea tumbled over the doorways of workshops where craftsmen worked to restore artworks made of ceramic tiles and battered wooden objects brought in from churches and private homes. In shady courtyards, restaurants served their customers at wrought-iron tables. Every direction led eventually into a large central square lined with white-painted houses and rows of orange trees. Here stood the old cathedral. The interior was flooded with light from multiple windows and featured an organ built into a decorative platform-type structure with railings, banisters and coats of arms, all painted scarlet and gold, and topped by cherubs and angels blowing golden trumpets. Side chapels glittered with gold paint, plaster images and murky oil paintings with obscure religious motifs. In the gardens outside were a number of small independent shrines, one with bones embedded in the brickwork. Interesting at first, these ghosts of a sterner, more ascetic age have a slightly gloomy air, offset by the welcome sight of flowers bright against a plain white wall, or shiny oranges clustered on the trees. Just off the coast of Faro lies a group of barrier islands, which wrap 20-odd miles of shoreline here and protect it from erosion by the sea. Each island is a long, narrow sandspit, partially covered with scrub vegetation. This provides a habitat for cormorants, terns, egrets, and other water birds who spend their days stepping gravely through the shallow tidal flats and feeding in their rich organic mud. The water was calm as our boat made its way across the lagoon, but by the time it reached the island, we were already among the Atlantic rollers coming in from the south. We scrambled up onto the stone jetty and looked down at the water, where a shoal of mullet-sized fish could be seen hurrying along, some actually breaking the surface. Since there are no facilities nor anything specific to do on the island, most visitors go beachcombing or just lie down in the sun beside their picnic baskets. They are anyway not allowed to walk around as they like because they might damage the wild plants, although not much grows except a few herbs, some tough, dry grasses, and the occasional cactus. A wooden boardwalk is provided for anyone who wants to explore. It follows the landward shore for a mile or so, winding past empty beaches, campsites used occasionally by fishermen from the mainland, and massive, mysteriously useless concrete blocks where cormorants gather to stare down into the water. Then all of a sudden the boardwalk turns and crosses the waist of the island, petering out in the dunes above the wide south-facing beach. There is no development at all. Just sand and driftwood and empty clam and cockle shells in their thousands. To the north is Europe, and to the south, Africa. But there is nothing here to identify either countries or continents. Only the footprints of birds, the music of waves, the smell of tamarisk and wild thyme on the wind, and the deep, pervasive warmth of the sun. It feels like this is the way things were right at the beginning of the world.